Hi, here's a recording on the basic skills that we need to learn in Chapter 7 or to do successfully in Chapter 7. And what is interesting is that Chapter 7 is about something that basically we've all already done. There's nothing truly new in this chapter. It seems complicated because there's a lot of symbolic language involved. But really, Chapter 7 is about something very familiar, which is reasoning. And reasoning is like taking a trip from premises, that is information that you have, to a conclusion, that is further information that you can infer from the premises. It's like taking a trip to the grocery store to get some milk. You have a starting point, your home, a route, and then a point of arrival, the section of the grocery store where the milk is. And similarly, when you reason, you have a starting point, the premises, a route, a sequence of intermediate steps, and the conclusion. Sometimes there aren't really any intermediate steps. You can get to the conclusion in just one leap. For example, here, if you have information that your class, say it's the first day of classes, and your the course that you're registered for either meets in room 213 or room 350, you know that it's either one of those two rooms, and it turns out that it's not room 213, you will be inferring, of course, that the course must be meeting in room 350. You have two possibilities. One is not an option, so it's got to be the other. Now, chapter 7 is all about how we use these patterns of reasoning to go from the information that we have to further information that is entailed by the information that we have. And what chapter 7 focuses on is these four patterns of reasoning, these four ways to take a further step towards the conclusion that we use all the time and that are very familiar, and we actually studied them in chapter 6. They're well known to us at this point. Modus ponens, modus tollens, disjunctive syllogism, and hypothetical syllogism. We use these all the time, and we certainly almost don't need to be taught about them. If you know that if it rains, then Bob will bring his umbrella. You look out the window and see that it's raining, you can infer that Bob will bring his umbrella. Again, if you know that if it rains, Bob brings his umbrella, you look out the window, you see Bob without an umbrella. He doesn't have his umbrella. You know at that point that it's not raining. If you have two alternatives as before, and the first one is not open, it's got to be the second, disjunctive syllogism. And finally, hypothetical syllogism. This is slightly more complicated, but it's actually also familiar. It's a chain of reasoning where you have two hypotheticals that lead to a third hypothetical statement or conditional. Suppose you know that if it rains, Bob will bring his umbrella. And you also know that if he brings his umbrella, then he will wear his boots. What follows from this? Well, obviously that if it rains, Bob will bring his boots. Again, it's a very familiar pattern of reasoning. Now, chapter 7 is all about how we use these forms of reasoning and others to go from information that we have to further information that is entailed by that information. So, for example, suppose that you know that if the lights are on, your parents are at home. You have that information. You also know that if your parents are at home, your brother is at home. You're driving home, you turn a corner, you see your house, and you see that the lights are on. At that point, you know that your brother is at home. But how do you know? Well, you know because your mind is able to take you from this information that you have to the conclusion that your brother is at home. And it takes you there in 2 steps. So let's see how that happens. It takes you there by applying these rules. That's the information you have. The lights are on, your parents are at home. If they're at home, your brother is at home, and the lights are on. So what does your mind do when it tells you that your brother is at home? Well, your mind takes a step from this information. If L then H and L entail H by modus ponens, when you have a conditional and the antecedent of that conditional, you infer the consequent. If R then U, if it rains, Bob will bring his umbrella. It rains, so he'll bring his umbrella. If the lights are on, your parents are at home, but hey, the lights are on, so your parents are at home. That's the pattern of reasoning we're using here. So we're using lines 1 and 3, modus ponens. And then now we have more information. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's see what we can do with that. Again, we know that if your parents are at home, then your brother is at home. And we just discovered that they are at home by reasoning on the information that we had. So again, we're using modus ponens to infer B. If H then B, and H entail B by 2, 4 modus ponens. So now you understand how you're able to be told that if the lights are on, parents are at home. If your parents are home, your brother is at home, and the lights are on, and you can infer from that that actually your brother is at home. You get there by reasoning about the information that you have and sort of like unraveling it until you get to the conclusion that your brother is at home. Sometimes there's more than one way to get there. Just like there are multiple routes to the same destination. Look here, there's a different way to get to B. As a matter of fact, 1 and 2 go together in accordance with hypothetical syllogism. There are 2 conditionals, and the consequent of line 1 is the same as the antecedent of line 2. So you can make a B line from L to B and infer if L then B. Just like down here, if R then U, if U then B. If it rains, Bob will bring his umbrella. If he brings his umbrella, he'll have his boots. So if it rains, he's going to have his boots. Here, if the lights are on, your parents are home. If they're home, then your brother is at home. So that entails that if the lights are on, your brother is at home. Lines 1 and 2, hypothetical syllogism, give us if L then B. And then you can do a modus ponens. Again, you have a conditional. If L then B, you have the antecedent, L. So this is the pattern. You can infer B, the consequent. 3 and 4 modus ponens give you B. Okay, so I'll stop here, and in the next video, we'll look at the exercises.